Hey guys, welcome to the webinar. I'm so glad that everybody here is able to join us today. My name is Shannon. I am the founder of Marketplace Seller Courses, online courses, tools, and resources for brand owners and private labels starting and building their brands and companies on Amazon. I have with me today special guest Connor Gillivan. He is the CMO of FreeeUp.com, and he has sold over $30 million online. He's hired hundreds of freelancers to help build his companies. He's a published author and is the owner of ConnorGillivan.com. He currently lives in Denver, Colorado, and lived and worked in areas of South Africa for 2 summers, working through a company focused on social entrepreneurship. So, Connor, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really glad to have you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me as well. It should be great.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking today about outsourcing, which is a huge topic in today's day and age. There are sort of 2 sides to this topic. And on one side, we have the technical aspect. How do I find good consultants or contractors to outsource to? And then the other side is maybe some of the internal hurdles of, okay, once I have a contractor, how do I work with them? How do I communicate? How do I know this person is trustworthy? So we're going to be talking about both of those today. But why don't we step back a little bit and just tell me how FreeeUp started, how you got involved, and what that process looked like a little bit, because I'd love to hear sort of the backstory of FreeeUp as a brand and as a company.
Yeah, of course. Would love to share. So like you said, I have sold a lot online. I actually started selling online in 2009. So early on, as Amazon was really growing up and the whole world of e-commerce was coming about, I was working with my business partner, who is the CEO of FreeeUp today, and I continue to work with. We were building up this Amazon business, working with brands around the United States, helping them to sell their products through the Amazon marketplace. And in the process, we ran into a situation where we had to start hiring. So we started hiring some part-time people. We had some full-time people in an office, but then we were also exposed to this idea of outsourcing and using websites like Upwork and Fiverr and Freelancer.com. We spent a couple of years using those and posting jobs and getting applicants and spending time trying to figure out who is the best for our business. We hired some really great people, but we also did run into a lot of turnover in the process. And I'm sure we'll kind of dive into some of those frustrations as we talk today. And so FreeeUp really came as a solution to those frustrations we were having. We one day, after a couple of years, kind of said to ourselves, the people we're networking with, it seems like they're having similar issues. It's hard to find good people for Amazon and Shopify and e-commerce in general. What if we created our own marketplace that addressed some of those frustrations, focused just on this whole world of e-commerce, and we made sure that we were there to help people along the process. So that was really the birth of FreeeUp. That happened mid-2015. So we've been at it for about 3.5 years now.
Wow. It's so cool. There are challenges, and I think there's 2 sides. There's 2 things that come to mind immediately. The first is that I think a lot of people are like me. I like to meet with people in person. That's just my personality. I love to be able to sit down with them over coffee, kind of get a feel for them, get a feel for their character and their personality and that kind of thing, see if it's going to be a good fit. And so the idea of outsourcing somebody that I might not even meet in person, face to face, is really hard for me, self-admittedly. The other thing that you mentioned that comes up is so many startups, specifically, especially solo entrepreneurs, solo props. It can be so challenging to find those first people that you need to hire. And I've run into more companies that spent so much money, a significant amount of money, hiring somebody that wound up not working out and doing little to nothing for them. Especially when I was doing web design, 6-7 years ago.
Sure.
That was a huge challenge. And people were like, hey, I need to, get this, my Shopify storefront or my Amazon storefront. And you say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. And they're like, I don't have any money. And you found out that they did have money at one point, but it's gone now. And it's because they spent it on somebody who wound up being totally uncredible. Right. And that's a huge challenge, especially in that thing, that startup phase where you don't have a system, you don't have an HR person who's done this, you don't have a talent pool that you're pulling from. So I think that going through this webinar is going to be really helpful, especially if you're in that stage, but also if you're an emerging business or an established business and looking to grow. there's so many benefits to using somebody who is an outsourced freelancer or contractor. And we'll talk about the logistics of it, but not having to have a full-time employee. Maybe you don't have full-time employee work. Maybe you don't, you're looking at all the taxes and all the different, benefits and healthcare and all that stuff.
Sure.
That part-time freelancers and subcontractors can be a huge, huge benefit to you without all the headaches. So that being said, let's start with our first topic, which is benefits of outsourcing. And specifically, let's talk about that in comparison to employees. So what are some of the biggest benefits in your mind of hiring a freelancer or outsourced as opposed to an employee?
Yeah, absolutely. So, two or three kind of pop into mind. So I, like I said, I had experience hiring full-time, part-time employees in an office, and then also a lot of experience hiring outsourced contractors, freelancers. And for myself as a business owner, I think one of the biggest benefits is that I more strategically am able to spend my dollars on talent when I'm hiring freelancers. So as opposed to hiring a full-time employee to come in and handle all of my Amazon operations for a set salary per year, I might go out and hire 3 or 4 freelancers that specialize within different areas of Amazon. I hire all of them at a different rate depending on their experience, where they're located, how much they're going to be working for the business. And in effect, I'm able to save money by spending my dollars a little bit differently. So I like that flexibility that you have as a business owner when you're hiring freelancers over employees. So I would say that's my first major one. Second one would be just lower risk. So bringing on a full-time employee, whether you're a startup or an emerging business, it's just a lot, right? You add a lot to your overhead. It could be $30,000 plus per year that's just on your books. And you need to make sure that employee is being as effective as possible for your business. So hiring a freelancer, they're more used to stop and go work. You may have them only on for part-time hours. If your business goes down in a month, you can, reallocate your hours and your time there, spend a little bit less money and make more sense for your business. So you're a little bit less risky when you're hiring freelancers. And then the last one I would just say is something you mentioned. It's the overhead. You don't need an office. You're not paying health benefits, and you're not paying retirement benefits. All of those add up when you have employees. So if you're hiring freelancers, you kind of take those off the table and you can use those towards other things for your business.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I think some people look at it as hiring freelancers and outsourcing is a way to skirt those things and not be responsible. And that's actually not true. There are certainly companies that may attempt to sort of manipulate the system and do that. But in many cases that I've found, working as a contractor or the people that I've hired, it's a huge benefit to them. They don't have time or availability to work a full-time job. They only have the allocation. So for them, it's actually, it can work out really, really well. So, again, I think that the principle of being able to hire strategically when you need it for somebody who specializes in that area, it gets away from this mentality that, hiring freelancers or outsourcing people, that's only for small startups. We're an established company. We can afford to hire people, but that still might not be the best use of your dollars. You may still only need somebody, a few hours a week or a few hours a month, depending on your scenario and at different seasons. We all know that, come Q4, obviously Amazon, a lot of other platforms pick up and you're going to need more help maybe with customer service or different areas. So not having somebody who's sitting on their hands for a good percentage of the year and only being utilized part-time, people are looking for that extra work. So we've actually seen it work very well that in some cases, outsourcing and using freelancers can be a very, very responsible, aspect of hiring.
Yeah, for sure. And just to build off that one more time. So the thing too is you can, even when you're hiring freelancers and contractors, you can still build a company, you can build a culture, you can have people dedicated to your mission, your vision. They aren't people that are just so distant and far off from what you're doing. You can very much find ways to incorporate them and keep them involved and get them interested in what you're trying to build.
Let's talk about our next topic, which is challenges with outsourcing. So these are some of the biggest technical or interpersonal challenges with outsourcing. I've got some of my own stories to share as well, but let's start from a technical standpoint. When somebody's going to hire freelancers and outsource, what are some of the biggest challenges that most companies are going to face?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one, and these are all challenges we ran into when we were hiring from some of the other larger platforms. The first one and the biggest is I just think the time that it takes to actually post a job, get introduced, or have 20, 25, 30 people apply to that job. And then you're responsible for looking at all their profiles, trying to make a judgment call on who's telling the truth, who's actually able to complete the work, setting up interviews with them, talking to each of them, and actually making that end hire. It can take a lot of time to do all that browsing and vetting. So I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs, they get into it because it's attractive to be able to hire an outsourced person. But then they get into that process and it becomes overwhelming. So I would say that's one of the first ones for sure.
Yeah.
How about yourself? Did you run into that as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, in fact, it's so funny. I have a friend of mine who used to work in HR. I was so overwhelmed looking at hiring somebody to do social media and also as an executive assistant that I actually hired them part-time to write and post the jobs to hire for these other people. Like, that's how much time I knew it was going to take.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly overwhelming to do the posting, go through all the resumes, vet it, set up phone calls and stuff. That alone is a part-time job. So that was the first hurdle and obstacle that I had to overcome. Just looking at outsourcing in that aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. Another one with us was actually just feeling like we were so much on our own when we were first getting started with some of these larger platforms. They very much operate as software platforms. So like we were just saying, you post your job, you get applicants. Everything is so automated that when you hit a point where you may need help with something, or you're just confused, or you're looking for some sort of advice, it's hard to come by with some of the larger platforms. So that was another frustration we ran into, and something that we've really tried to make more of a focus with FreeeUp, where, hey, you can always get in touch with me. You can get in touch with my business partner. We have a team of support that knows outsourcing well, and you can talk with them and ask questions as you're going through the process and understanding how it can apply to your business.
Yeah, and I've used services like Upwork and Fiverr before, and some of those are great platforms, and definitely recommended for certain uses. But
yeah.
In terms of that pairing up, in terms of the HR component, that's actually something that you guys take out of the process. So let's talk a little bit specifically about FreeeUp and how you guys solve that problem of pairing somebody up with somebody who's going to be a good, contractor for them, and what that looks like, what that process looks like for you guys behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course. So the first thing we do is we actually pre-vet all of the freelancers that want to join the platform. So they go through an application, interview, and testing process. We only take the top 1% of people that apply. So that initial process weeds out a lot of people that may be on the other platforms that aren't going to be as good of a fit for you specifically as a business owner. And then when it comes to actually getting introduced, you fill out a simple form, almost a job post as if you would on the other places. But instead of it just getting posted and everyone being able to apply, it actually comes into us internally. It goes out to the freelancers that are available for the work. And then we only match you up with one person at a time based off all your requirements. So you as the entrepreneur, the business owner, you get to meet them, have a conversation. If there's feedback, you can share it with us. We'll introduce you to someone else. You could hire them. You could ask for another person. It's very much a one freelancer at a time process, as opposed to being inundated with a lot of requests.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the biggest thing for me was, again, from my previous experience, you guys took the HR component out of it, right? I didn't have to vet, all these different ones. And, review manipulation is always a potential, I think, that people are scared of. This person has thousands of reviews or, stars. Are they all legitimate? But even more so, sometimes it's challenging because, you're not just looking for somebody who's really good. You're looking for somebody who's going to be a good fit for you. And I think that's the difference. So, my experience with this was I was talking to one of my business development, business coaches, and, basically looked at like, here's all the different things I need. What do I need from that? And he basically broke it down and said, you needed an executive assistant. And so I had mentioned that you guys had reached out to me and had even provided some initial credits, which was awesome for me to get started. He's like, that's a no-brainer. Sign up for FreeeUp and go ahead and use it for your executive assistant. So I literally filled it out,
Mhm.
exactly what I was looking for, broke down all the tasks that I was looking for, skills and things that they would need to accomplish those. And I think within 24 hours, I got like the perfect fit profile, and
Nice.
was really really floored by that. And I've hired her, my executive assistant, part time. The schedule works out really well. And one of the cool things that I want to mention, and we'll talk a little more about, is that you guys, instead of just sort of making it anomalous, you actually allow people to select the level that they're looking for and
Mm.
whether they're US based or not. So that to me was huge because I really needed somebody that was US based for a couple different reasons.
Yeah.
And being able to find that, like, I was willing to pay more for it, but it just fit so well. I needed somebody in the same time zone so that we could talk during the day. And there was just, a handful of things that really made it a good fit. But let's talk about that aspect, because I think that's actually very, very critical and makes a huge difference and is a huge differentiator between you and other platforms. Talk about that pricing level structure and
Mm.
also the skill level structure and how that correlates.
Yeah, of course. So, like you said, we really tried to break it down as much as possible when we started the business into these different tiers of where a freelancer could land, and also based off of where they're living. Because we have over 2,000 freelancers in the network today. About 40% are in the Philippines, 40% are in the U.S., and the other 20% are scattered around the world. So we really wanted to try to break it down, and so the way we did it is we have kind of 3 tiers to try to make it easy for a business owner to understand. You have your basic tier, which is usually someone from outside the U.S. They may be priced $5 to $20 per hour, depending on the skill set, but they're going to be more of a follower. You have your own processes. You know how to do something. You want to take it off your plate. Okay, this person's great for that. You have your mid tier, more of a specialist. They might come with their own expertise, their own processes. Maybe it's something you're familiar with and you're doing within your business, but you want someone to take it off your plate so you don't have to worry about it anymore. That could be someone outside the US or in the US. They're going to be a little bit more expensive, maybe your $15 to $30 per hour rate. And then you have your kind of higher level expert, consultant, agency level. They're going to be 25 plus per hour. They could be US or non-US, but they're going to really be able to come into your business, set up new processes for you, teach you new things about the business that you may not know, and really be there kind of as a partner or an advisor as you're building the business in different ways. So those are kind of the 3 tiers and the pricing. And we found it to be very helpful to break it up in that way so that business owners can wrap their head around it a little bit more.
And what's nice is you can actually select multiple ones. You're not required to just select one. So if I'm open to them being US or non-US based, as long as they're in this range, or yeah, maybe I need somebody, to be somebody who's starting out, but let's also get some applicants of people who are a little more experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk real quick about that, because I think knowing, as a business owner, knowing what you need is so important. And that's always the first and most challenging step. So when I was having this conversation with Tyler, we were talking about it and looking at that different aspect of, social media, for example, is going to be my next hire. And so we can look at it from 3 levels. So one is I've got a system for social media and all I need is somebody to go in and do the logistical posting kind of thing.
Sure.
The step up would be somebody who, they know they've got a little more experience about it, and they're basically able to take some of those tasks off. There would be proactive. But the highest level would really be somebody that says, okay, you're bringing your own, like you said, expertise to the table. So I think sort of that 3 levels of, like, the lower level is I'm telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
The mid level is like, we're going to collaborate on this and I'm going to assign you tasks. And the higher level is you tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest difference. I'd hired somebody else previously and they'd done a decent job, but they weren't trained in the arena of executive assistant. Like, it's very specific in terms of what you need to do.
Sure.
And when I got onboarded with Jeannie, my current assistant, she was like, here's what we do. Here's how we communicate. Here's the system that we use. It was just like brilliant. Thank goodness. Like, that's what I need. I need somebody to tell me what to do and how this works so that you can take the things off my plate. And I think that was the biggest challenge before. I'd hired interns and I'd hired different people part-time. Yep. And it never worked out because they were just at the delegate level. And just where I was at in terms of my business, There were just certain things that I needed where I needed that higher level of proactivity. I needed that higher level of experience. And so I think as a business owner, knowing this is a very simple menial task, it's repetitive. I just need somebody else to do it. I can
Yep.
outsource it easily. I can train them easily. That kind of gives you the levels versus I have no idea what I'm doing. I need somebody else to tell me what to do. And I have to pay top dollar for that. But that's the different level of experience you're going to get. And that's why that ability to match up at those different levels is so helpful.
Yeah, and there's tons of opportunities too where you could come in not knowing anything. You spend a little extra money hiring that person, but you meet with them, you learn a little bit more about it. They teach you, or even give you a standard operating procedure that you could use, and then they also help you hire someone that's the basic or mid-tier person, so that when they go and do it on an ongoing level, you're not paying that super high rate. They just helped you get to a place where you can hire the other people.
That's really helpful and a brilliant model. I mean, and that's what I do with a lot of companies is, from my level, for Amazon expertise, it's certainly more high level.
Yeah.
And I tell companies, like, if you want to be successful, just do what I tell you to do. Like, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. But this is the strategy. I don't have to be the guy going in there, building the flat file templates, writing the copy, doing graphic design. I'm okay at those. But where I really add value is in the higher level strategy. And I think the same thing is true of social media. I think the same thing is true of a lot of other aspects of business. Once you get past it, though, like you said, again, with social media, as an example, I've got somebody that I'm hiring to do the high level strategy, and then they're going to help me in the same way that you said, find somebody who sort of that mid to lower level tier who can execute the strategy, because that's a huge investment of dollars well spent. And a good example of what you pointed out earlier is I don't have to hire that expert strategist full time. Like, that would be a huge overhead on my payroll. I can just hire them for the time that I need them, and then we can hire somebody at a mid to low level to execute it, and still get the same results. Still get the success that we need ongoing. Okay, this is my favorite topic, and I think after you guys had reached out to me and said, hey, we want to provide you with some initial credits, I forget what it was, but some initial credits to use on FreeeUp, and it'd probably been like a month and a half, and I still hadn't used them. And the reason wasn't because the platform was not intuitive, because it's super intuitive. It wasn't because it was complicated. They were all internal hurdles and obstacles that I had to overcome. And I remember calling you up, we had like a half-hour conversation about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the internal hurdles and obstacles to outsourcing, because I think in a lot of cases, a lot of people are like me. I can find people using a platform and logistically pay to hire somebody. That's not the challenge. The challenge is inside. Let's spend a few minutes to talk about the internal obstacles to hiring and outsourcing.
Yeah, of course. So I think the biggest one that I hear the most from clients who are just getting started with us is a lot about trust. So I run my business here. I've built it to a good level. I have access to all these things. How can I trust someone, potentially on the other side of the world or on the other side of the country, with all of this hard work that I put into my business? How can I trust they're going to do the work properly? They're not going to overbill their hours. They're not going to try to cheat me out of everything that I've built up for myself. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles to get over. I definitely faced it myself when we were first hiring people in outsourcing. And one of the things I've eventually come to the realization about with freelancers is that a lot of the people, and especially the ones that we vet and come onto the FreeeUp marketplace, they're all running their own businesses as well. So they have an expertise. I'm great at social media. I don't want to work for a company full time. I'm going to go out and try to build my business and offer it to other clients around the world. So a lot of them, their purpose isn't to get an extra $5, $10, $15 out of you. It's really to build that relationship and be able to grow their business and your business at the same time. And I think that was something tough to come to a realization about, and it took some time. But I think that's a good way to look at it when you're looking to outsource, as opposed to having so many trust issues internally. But what about you? How about your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the biggest challenge, is how can I trust somebody that I haven't met face to face? And I'll tell you, this is a really good example of it, is Skype, Zoom,
Yep.
Google. There's all these really great opportunities where you have the ability to get as close to an in-person conversation and be able to chat with somebody face to face, even if you're not in person. And that does calm a lot of those fears or anxieties and say, I really like this person. They seem very smart. They're competent.
Yep.
But for me, the biggest challenge was it felt overwhelming and I didn't know how to do it because I hadn't been good at it. I hadn't done it before.
Yeah.
But that's true of every aspect of business. And, it's challenging for me that, over different periods, I looked at other people who were really, really successful. They were very good. They had no problems hiring people. I remember hearing this great story on the How I Built This podcast, which is one of my favorite business podcasts. And Guy Raz was interviewing Blake McCoskey and talking about how he started Tom's Shoes. And, first week, they were in the window of a store, and then they did a magazine article or a newspaper article about him, blew up. And he's like, I just called like 15 people on Craigslist and had them all in my apartment, like, emailing and calling people back and letting them know when their shoes were going to be delivered, because we didn't even have that inventory in stock. And I just thought there was no way I would do that. He had no problem immediately outsourcing, having 15 people from Craigslist in his apartment. And the challenge is there's a lot of business owners like myself who will look at other people and go, how come they can do it and I can't do it? And a lot of it just has to do with being willing to overcome the fear. Maybe they had the fear and they overcame it. Maybe they didn't have the fear and you have to. That's just going to be your bag. So the ability to face into it is super huge. And just say, if I want to be successful, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And Henry Cloud, who's one of my favorite business authors and leadership authors, he talks about this idea of facing into our challenges. So instead of like, I've got this huge challenge and it's causing anxiety or stress, of the idea of leaning into it, facing into it, addressing it, and hitting it head on so that you can deal with it. And honestly, for me, selling my very first product on Amazon, I had to do that process. I looked at all the reasons why I wasn't doing it, why I hadn't done it yet. Every single one of them had to do with fear, and every single one of them was irrational. Once I faced into those, I was able to overcome it and be successful. So, the other quote that Henry Cloud talks about, which is perfectly, critical in this instance, is he said, successful people leverage their strengths. We get that. That makes sense.
Yep.
He said, super successful people leverage the strengths of other people. And that's what services like FreeeUp allow you to do. Yeah. You're not just leveraging your strengths. You're like, I might not be good at anything. I'm not good at web design or social media. They're like, yeah, but your website's awesome and your social media is awesome. And you're like, yeah, but I leverage all of these other people's strengths to do that. And another favorite business leader, he said, when you do what only you can do, which is run your business, high-level strategy, your business will reflect all of your strengths and none of your weaknesses. And that's, an Andy Stanley quote. But I just love that idea. If you hire your weaknesses, if you hire other people to support you, your business will reflect all of your strengths and none of your weaknesses. And that's where all of us want to be. And, what I find so far is this platform allows you to do that. So
nice.
Let's hit on the next topic, because this kind of plays into dealing with some of those internal hurdles. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago called "Doing Things You're Not Good At Is Good for You." So just understand, if you're not good at outsourcing, it's going to be a growth step for you. Sure. That's okay. Understand that it's hard at first. It will get easier and you'll get better at it. You'll develop patterns and relationships and understand how the system works. And then you can really grow and thrive your business. So let's talk about the best practices for vetting and hiring outsourced contractors. Now, you guys talk about it, in FreeeUp, how you make it super simple. But regardless of where people are hiring somebody, like I said, it could be Fiverr or Upwork, wherever. Talk about some of the best practices for vetting and hiring outsourced contractors.
Awesome. Yeah. So the first step I always like to encourage people to take is to really identify who your ideal candidate is, and also to know the task that you're looking to take off your plate. So you had talked about this a little bit before. You were talking with your coach. You had this big list, and he was like, "Oh, cool, exec assistant. That's who you need." Right. So getting that list of tasks out first, and maybe even identifying one of the ones that's taking up the most of your time, but is also one of the simplest. That's probably a good place to start, because it's not going to take too much onboarding, training, And you'll be able to tell really quickly if the person's good for it or not. So, first step, get that task list out, figure out what that simple and time consuming task is that you want to get off your plate, and then figure out who your ideal candidate is. And you can kind of break that down into a number of categories. So you can look at location. Do you have a preference for US versus non-US? How important is that? You can talk about their rate. How much budget do you have? How comfortable are you paying a certain rate for certain people? Something that I like to look at a lot, because a lot of it comes down to how you actually work with that person, is what are their personal values? So are they hard workers? Do they value money or impact more? Do they, how do they work with clients and things along those lines? Those can make a big difference in how you're able to work with them. A few other things is hammer down what skills you need them to know. So if it has to do with a certain software, maybe you really need them to know how to use Gmail and Google Docs and Google Sheets extremely well. Make sure you're asking about those and you touch on those in your interview with them. And then also think about availability. You had said it was important that they were working on the same hours as you. If that's a big factor, make sure you have that down as well. And what this does for you is, when you put together this model of your ideal candidate, it makes it a lot easier to go through that hiring process, because as you're talking to these people, you're going through your checklist. Oh, okay, there's 2 red flags. They don't meet up. Hey, that's okay. Go find someone else that does meet up with all of your checklist. And it just makes it easier for you to know exactly who you're looking for. So I would say that's one of my first things is really understand that and use that as a part of your hiring. And then once you actually find someone, once you're ready to hire them, I like to encourage people to start slow. So don't toss them into 20, 30 hours a week and kind of hope that everything goes well. Assign test projects. So if it's a social media person, give them an hour of work to schedule things out of content that you've already created. See how they do with it. See how they communicate with you, and understand how that working relationship will go. Do that slowly 4, 5, 6 times until you understand what that work looks like between you and them. And then you can get them more into a schedule and have them working on their own. But it's smart to start slow, give those test projects, understand your process first before you jump into anything, so you don't look back on it 20 hours later and you're regretting why you paid that much money for the work that person did.
Yeah, I think those are really good and helpful insights. And again, I think there's, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're new, you're not used to hiring other people in outsourcing, know that you're going to make mistakes. And what I mean by that is, know that you're going to hire people that don't work out. Mm-hmm. That's business. That's life. And I think that, again, those are the internal hurdles and obstacles of like, well, I tried that once and it didn't work. Right. Like, yeah. It's like saying, well, I tried dating one time and it didn't work out, so I'm not doing that again. Like, you're going to have to go on lots of dates to find the right contract, find the right freelancer that fits. Mm-hmm. And if you can minimize the risk and the amount of time that it takes, where, like you said, you're spending 15 or 20 bucks to give them a test project, see how it does. That's way different than doing a whole thorough interview process, bringing somebody on as a part-time or even temp employee, right, and trying it out for a couple of weeks, which is going to be really expensive to find out, hey, it's not a good fit, personality, attention to whatever. So being willing to take those risks, start small, try it, understand that you might go through a few people before you find the right person, but once you do, it will be a game changer. It will change your life, and it will allow you to build and grow your business. Anything else in terms of best practices for hiring?
Yeah, something you just kind of mentioned there, and I think it builds back into the fear of hiring and having people working with you, is that ability to fire fast. I think that's really important when you're hiring contractors. They may hit all your checklists. You may have a good first test project with them, but then something happens where it just doesn't work out. It's okay to let people go and to move on to another person. It's also even more okay, I think, with contractors and freelancers, because they understand that they're working with multiple clients at any given time. If they lose one person, okay, they're going to go out and find another one. So don't have that fear of, oh man, am I going to ruin this person's life by firing them fast and kind of setting that person up for failure. It's okay. You can find someone else. They'll be okay. And it's not the end of the world if you have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the long-term maxim, slow to hire, quick to fire. In the case of outsourcing and freelancers, it should actually be quick to hire, quick to fire. And so, yeah, you find somebody, think that might be a good fit, hire them for a couple hours, and if it doesn't work out, then you're done. Because the faster you go through people, the faster you're going to find the right person. Yeah. Now, that being said, let's move into the last part that I want to talk about. And this is best practices for managing and communicating with outsourced contractors. And this is huge because I think there's a lot of people, myself included, who did this part wrong and felt like they didn't work out. Where in reality, I hadn't given them, we hadn't communicated effectively what we needed. We hadn't figured out, okay, how does this thing work? Like, are you just supposed to know what I want? You're the expert, so I'm just going to give you this task and expect it to be exactly what I wanted. And it turns out we weren't on the same page at all. So I think the communication and managing that relationship is critical for the success of that, regardless of how good they are. So they can be the perfect person, the perfect fit, but if you don't manage the communication aspect of it and those touch points and the expectations, it's probably not going to work out at all. And you could think it was a failure because, well, it didn't work. But let's delve into this because I think this is going to be really helpful. Let's talk about some best practices for managing and communicating with those freelancers.
Awesome. Yeah, completely agree with you too. I've met tons of people who have gotten to this point and then they, for some reason or another, the communication didn't work and they went away from outsourcing and hiring contractors. So it's a critical point of hiring and working with a freelancer. And I've got some cool tips that I use on a regular basis and I've found to be extremely useful. So the first one is to choose a communication channel. Find one that you're going to use and that's how you're going to communicate with that contractor or freelancer. For myself, I use Skype. It's just what our business uses. I'm always on it. Most of the freelancers that use our platform are on it as well. And that's where I just know I can get in touch with that person at any time. For video meetings and things along those lines, I use Zoom. So those are my two main communication channels. I establish that with them up front and just make it very clear that's how we're going to communicate so there aren't any confusions there. The second thing, I like to set daily check-ins with anyone that I work with, and that's through Skype. So, hey, I'd like you to work on a project tomorrow. It's going to be about 2 hours. Let's plan on working from 10 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern. When you start at 10, just go ahead and check in with me on Skype. Let me know what you're going to be working on. I'll share any feedback or any details I have for the work that you're going to be doing. And then at the end of the shift, just check out with me. Let me know what you worked on. Let me know what you completed. If you need anything from me or if you ran into any issues. And for me right there, even as a busy business owner, if I'm not there at the time, I know that if I come back to that chat at a later time in the day, I see what they did. I see when they ended. I can give them feedback. I can see what issues they had. And we have a direct communication channel going at all times.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a video chat. Sometimes it can just be they're just chatting, just text chat, just to give you an update of what's going on and what they've worked on.
Exactly. Yep. And then to the video chat. So I like to do usually about once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'll have a video chat and we'll sit down. We'll talk through the goals that they're working through. I'll give them updates on the business. I'll answer any questions they have. I'll kind of put things on my task list of what they need from me. And what that does is it allows you to build that relationship further. You're never going to become a buddy with someone if you never meet with them at all. So having that FaceTime with them, even if it's just 30 minutes once a week, once every 2 weeks, it allows them to buy more into your business. You're able to buy more into their abilities and what they can do for you. And it keeps you guys on the same page for actually working together.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest challenge that I faced with previous hires was not having a scheduled pre-established time to check in, especially because everybody was remote. And so in that capacity, you're not running into people at the water cooler. Your office isn't next door. You're not able to just pop in and chat. So it's not going to happen automatically. You have to go ahead and schedule it. The next thing that I want to talk about is the idea of setting a clear task with a goal and a deadline. And so I think that, from that aspect of it, measurable, attainable, and time bound. In business, we learn the MAT, principle is you have to give them a task that's measurable, attainable, and time bound. And if you do that and clearly communicate, that's going to drastically increase. Because sometimes I'd say, here's the next task. And then a week later, it's like, where is it? Like, well, you didn't give me a deadline. So, it wasn't top of my, priority. So that's really, really critical. Let's talk about assigning specific tasks and maybe some other best practices that you would have in that arena.
Yeah, cool. Great call. And definitely an issue people run into. For myself, when I'm starting a new task with someone, I actually set up a meeting. So I come prepared to that meeting. I'll usually, if it's a little bit more in depth, I'll have a Google Doc either with the process of what they should be following or what I've seen success with in the past. Or if it's just something smaller, I have notes of, what they're working towards, what the deadline is, and how I expect to get updates as they're working through that on a regular basis so that I'm up to speed and I know what's going on. And another expectation you can set is, listen, we're always going to set deadlines together, and we want to work as hard as possible to hit all of them. But if it comes a time, let's say, the deadline's 2 weeks out and a week in, you don't think it's realistic that we're going to hit it anymore, let's talk about it. Communicate with me. Let me know what issues you're running into. Let's set a new deadline or let's figure out how we can adjust and keep moving things forward so that we're continuing to work towards that eventual goal.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned, sort of a 3-step process, which is funny that even though I believe in the philosophy, I don't always execute it, right? But my 3-step process for training is, one, you have to give them some type of written or recorded resource. And video right now is so easy. So for Zoom, I use that for almost all my trainings and communication because I can very easily record it, save it as a Dropbox file, and they can go reference at any time. The other thing that this does, I was talking to a friend of mine and she's got tons of contractors. She uses she said, in the same way that you put together your Amazon courses with all of these videos, links and stuff, she said, you have to do the same thing with your freelancers and contractors. You've got to have that, list of, for this task, here's the checklist and here's the video to watch how to do it. The reason that's so helpful is, two, one, you can train and onboard people really easily. And two, it makes it much easier if you have to bring in somebody else or you wind up replacing somebody. If they're no longer become available, or you need to bring in somebody else, that you've got this whole training system that you've essentially established. And then you don't have to start over from square one. It's like, watch these videos, go through the checklist, and you'll know how to do it. So the first is that you have to give them something that they can go back to and reference. And then beyond that, it's the first time I do it and you watch. If we're talking about like repetitive tasks, so maybe accounting, for example, I use Xero for accounting. I'm going to do it and you watch, and I'm going to explain it to you. You're going to go back to this resource and you're going to go through the checklist and the video. And then the last thing is you do it and I watch. That way I can catch any mistakes or make sure that, that if there's something you're missing. And that 3-step process has worked really well. And it's just a matter of making sure and having the discipline of, no matter how menial the task is, if I go back to that and use it, it works. So here's a written or recorded resource. You do it, I watch, or I do it, you watch, and then you do it, I watch. It really makes it thorough and holistic. And then people, they're going to be able to get it and they're going to be able to do it right.
Yeah, and it helps with that trust factor too. I love the last step where they do it, you watch, because as a business owner, you may be wondering, all right, I'm giving them these resources, but can they actually do it? Are they understanding everything? Are they asking the questions they should be? When you flip the tables and you watch them do it and can give them live feedback, that makes the world of a difference. And then you leave that session trusting what they can do, and they can go and handle that for your business.
The other thing that I want to mention, there's 2 things that come to mind. I'll try not to forget them both.
Yeah.
The first one is specifically for things like graphic design, copywriting. This is really huge for Amazon listings or websites or social media. Find examples that you like and give them to them, right? Yes. So, Fiverr is something that I use for really simple one-off graphics. It's really simple and a great service to use. And I'll actually go through the different profiles or their portfolios, look at different ones that I like and say, hey, in fact, I ordered some Facebook ad graphics the other day.
Nice.
And I said, I like this one that you did. I like this style. And then I basically gave them, here's the text, here's, some raw images, and giving them that example, it cuts down on so much communication, them going in the wrong direction.
Right.
So I think that if you take the time to say, I'm getting my new website designed, I like these 3 websites.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this one because it's simple. I like this one because of the color scheme. And I like this one because of the layout. That's going to make it 10 times easier to do that. I know it takes work to do that, but it's much better than throwing spaghetti on the wall and saying, okay, go build me a website. And let's hope that it works out. And let's hope that I like it. So it's really important to find examples that you really like and that you know are effective. If you're looking at a bestseller on Amazon, I'm not saying that they're always perfectly optimized, but usually they do a good job. That's why they got there. Take the time to do the research and provide those specific links, upload the graphics as attachments, whatever you need to do to show them what it is that you want and are looking for, because that's going to cut down on the potential miscommunication and also make you happier with their end result.
Nice. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I do that with all of our designers, writers, web designers, dev type of stuff. And it's super useful. Another thing I would note is just with that type of work, with creative type of work, just expect there to be a few revisions at first. Even if you give them the inspiration, kind of the examples, just expect the first time it comes back, it's okay to give feedback, let them go make a few more changes, do that 2 or 3 times until you get a perfect product. If you work with the same person over the long term, they're going to understand your preferences and then be able just to do it without many revisions. But at first, that's kind of how you communicate and get on the same page with creative type of work.
Yeah, and that is something else that I wanted to mention about FreeeUp, because going through it, like hiring a couple different people for graphic design and copy for Amazon and SEO, a lot of people expect it to be a longer term relationship. And the platform is really designed to establish that this is going to be somebody that you can hire for a long time. Obviously, you don't have to. If you have a shorter project or one-on project, that works. But for an executive assistant, I'm like, I do not want to hire somebody for a month. I want somebody to be with me for the next 2 or 3 years. Totally. And again, having those training processes in place makes it really easy for me to ever change somebody. So if they, like I said, become unavailable, thinking about it from an executive assistant standpoint, which I was an executive assistant in the entertainment world, and I won't tell who the story is about, but people in Hollywood, especially celebrity types, they're notorious for not doing anything themselves. They want somebody else to do pretty much every task. And on one hand, from an assistant, it's like, oh gosh, like, can't you do something? But if you look at their use of their time, they are so effective because they delegate every aspect of their life.
Sure.
And it frees them up to be able to, one, they have more recreational time because they're not handling all these odds and ends. But 2, a majority of their time is spent doing what only they can do. And it does make them very, very effective. The funny story is we had a boss who was in New York. We were in LA, and he called his assistant on the phone in LA and asked her to call down to the lobby of the hotel to bring up some hot water for tea. We're thinking, like, I know she's on speed dial, but like, it's hitting 0 on your phone to go to the hotel lobby.
He was just wired to do that.
He's just wired. Everything goes to the assistant. So even if it's ordering tea, from the lobby, then, you go through your assistant. But the idea with that is, once you get a trained assistant, and I even told my assistant this, I said, if you ever leave, you have to train your replacement. Like, I just want you to know that, because I want to get to a system where all of these things that I'm delegating to you are handled and taken care of. And that way, when I go to the next person, I don't have to start over. I want you to train them. And we saw that process. I mean, the executive assistant world, that's exactly what they do. Somebody would give a 2-week notice. Okay, we hired your replacement. Now you got to go through and train them. And if they have questions, they're going to follow up and call you, the next few weeks. So I think just understanding that your goal is not to do a one-off, but to build a lifestyle of, again, supplementing your weaknesses with somebody else's strengths to be able to empower you to effectively run your business is huge. It's absolutely a game changer, and it's going to make a big difference in your business and any business that you work in.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. It's all a mindset at the end of the day when it comes to this type of stuff. And we talked about some mental hurdles that you have to get over to get there. But once you do, I mean, it's amazing. I work with 20 plus VAs on a regular basis. And it's great. You know, like you said, they're stronger in a lot of areas that I'm not. I stay focused on, you know, my breadwinners and where I'm great. And then that they do a lot of amazing work for me. And I've been able to build some amazing personal relationships with them as well. And that's very fulfilling too, when you're working with people, they're doing great work, but you also know them well and you can relate to them, and you're building something together.
Yeah, I think that is huge. And, you know, it is. It's important to build a business, but you're also, like you said, sort of building your life. I think the other thing that I just want to mention as we get ready to wrap up is the idea that, you know, you have a system for communication, like you mentioned. When I hired my executive assistant, she said, I use Trello. And she's like, and here's how I set it up, and here's how we're going to communicate. And, you know, that's just one example. I know that there's Asana and tons of other, you know, ones, but having a system where I can easily create a task, I drag it to the day that I wanted to do it. She has comments, she adds those. You got all kinds of integrations where you can upload files from Dropbox and do all these kind of integrations and calendar and scheduling. It really is helpful to ensure that the tasks that you want are done when you want them and how you want them. And there's a way for them to ask questions and default. And like you said, you know, do revisions, because it's never going to be perfect the first time. But if you can start to make those shifts and challenges, overcome those challenges, it can make a huge impact in your business. So just want to wrap up here. Any final thoughts for people who are thinking about getting started using an outsource, you know, freelancer? Any sort of sage words of advice that you would give somebody as we get ready to close out here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we really went through the full spectrum of everything today, from, you know, the mental hurdles to actually hiring and going through that process, to working with someone on the back end. And I think for people listening, if they're new to it, or even if they're just getting started with it, all of it, even though I think we've explained it pretty well, it can be a little bit overwhelming. I think at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, business owner, you really just, like you said, you need to jump in. Go ahead and take a shot. Take $50. Go in with $50. See what comes out of it. You never know. You could meet someone that you end up working with for 5+ years down the road. You may learn an amazing lesson and realize that you made a big mistake. And okay, it's going to take another $50 to find that perfect person. But you're never going to get to that lifestyle that we talked about unless you kind of put 2 feet forward, give it a shot, and see what comes of it. So I think it's just kind of a little bit of a mental push for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, if you haven't done it, once you do, you'll never go back. Just once you take the leap, and then it becomes easier and easier. Like I said, doing things we're not good at is good for us. And, you know, things that used to be really difficult are easy for me now. So, but it's not a matter of what I can do. And I think this is actually a hurdle and a challenge that a lot of people face. I used to be a jack of all trades, still am in many ways. I'm good at a lot of different things. I'm not great, but I'm competent. So whether it's building a website or social media, like I can figure things out, and pretty technical savvy. I can learn new things fast, but that is not the best use of my time. Right. And I think that that's the important thing. Now, you guys actually have a special that if we'll have the landing page and the link underneath the webinar, underneath the video here on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you're watching. But you can click that link, and if you sign up using that link through FreeeUp, they'll actually give you a $25 FreeeUp coupon to use, which is super cool to help you get started. It's Marketplace Seller Course 25, and that's Marketplace Seller Course 25. I am an affiliate of FreeeUp. I became an affiliate because I believed in the software, believed in the tool, and saw the difference that it made in my life, and hoping that it can make the same in yours. So, Connor, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon.